Hi there, and welcome back to KG and Associates. We are Straight Talk for Mental Health, and I am so thrilled for what we're going to be doing today. We have a guest speaker that I'm so excited to talk to you about, and I know our listeners will be interested in hearing some of her material. I'm Karen Goslin. I'm the founder of KG and Associates, and I'm here today with my associate Janice D'Souza. And our guest speaker today is Lisa Bragg. She recently wrote a book that we are excited to talk about. But let me tell you a little bit about her, just to kind of get this in perspective. Lisa worked as an anchor and TV reporter for over 15 years. So she worked in the media, and I want to hear more about that. I think when I first met you, Lisa, I knew that that's what you had been doing. She is the founder of a Toronto content and consulting firm called Media Face. And she recently wrote this book called Bragging Rights. And this is a huge topic, and I'm excited to talk to you about this. It's about purposeful self-promotion. And when I had it in our link earlier, it was like self-promotion. And then I realized, oh, I'm missing that word purposeful. And it just kind of landed for me because I thought, I think that word is going to be pretty important to our discussion today. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And that's one of the best ways is to get somebody else to read your bio for you to self-promote, right? You hand it to somebody else and they can say all the great things about you.
Exactly. Then you know you've done good self-promotion because people know about you and people know what to say about you. I guess that's that's evidence that you've done that. So,
Exactly. It's one of the easiest ways. Thanks for
exactly.
having me.
Yeah, of course. And I've dipped into your book, and I love how you have a lot of different pieces of it in terms of it's based on research. I love how you have those pieces at the end of each chapter of things to consider to actually make what the research is telling us and about what we do next in our lives. And I know, Janice, you and I are big on that with our clients, that it's not just the information or the self-awareness. It's about what are you going to do different when you wake up tomorrow morning, right? Because if we're going to do any of this improvement, it's got to land somewhere that I know maybe what I'm going to be doing differently when I wake up. So otherwise, what are we doing this for? So let's just jump right into it. So tell me why you picked this topic, why you wrote this book, why you explored this research on this topic. Apart from the fact that it's your last name, what is this about for you, Lisa?
Well, it really does start with it is my last name. So growing up, I would, it's like so many of us, I was a high achiever. I was always doing things. I was involved and enthusiastic. And people, when I was about 13 years old, they would say, "Oh, you're going to brag about it." And I realized my success, with my last name meant something to people. So I was really attuned that whenever I achieved something, people would comment on it. And it wasn't always a positive comment. So I was like, huh. So then I started hiding myself more and more. I didn't tell people when I did something. I still went for things, but I didn't tell them all the awesome things I was doing. I was still hiding. I was always hiding my accomplishments, my successes, whatever I was doing. I wasn't telling people. And then I went into broadcast journalism and I was always telling everyone else's stories. And I didn't really understand that I needed to also have my own stories. And back in my day in broadcasting, you weren't the story. Now it's a bit different, but I was collecting everyone else's stories and I'd go up to people and I would say, "Hey, Janice, you're the expert in this. May I interview you for this story?" Because I was always trying to find somebody different than what the rest of the pack was trying to do. So I was trying to stay away from the same old of Steve and Bob and, looking for somebody different and just have somebody who has a unique perspective on whatever it is. And so often I'd go up to people and they'd say, "Oh, no, not me. I'm not the expert," or "maybe later," or "I'm not quite there yet." And so often, though, I'd get the chance to do some media coaching right then and there and make it a safe place for them. And I'd say, "You know what, we'll do it. And if you feel comfortable." And so I was allowed a little bit more time, because I was for a long time a videographer. So I would be by myself so I could give that little coaching. And then people, after they would do this segment with me, they would go on to do great things. I would see them get more media coverage and I would see them get more opportunities. And I have the thank you notes still from people saying, "Thank you for helping me to do this because these great things have happened." And then I owned a content company and I realized the same thing. So many people are the experts. They should be seen and heard, but they're not, because so many of us are taught to be hidden gems, play small, put your head down, do good work, and eventually someone will notice you. But I realized in this era that we're in, that we can no longer wait for other people to notice us. We're not in our small villages or in close proximity of other relatives who might be singing our praises from the rooftops. No, we're often, by ourselves working, or we're working in small communities, or working with people who are across the world. And so we need to be able to say, here's how I'm here to serve. And then here's how we can partner together. And then we can do things that are better and bigger and go further, farther, faster together. So Bragging Rights is not a me book. It sounds like it would be, because it's about self-promotion, but it's really about, how do I tell you how I'm here to serve? And then we can partner and go forward together.
Wow. So it's almost like, it's like you realized you were hiding, then you launch it. Isn't it interesting, the career you chose? Because then you're like bringing people out of hiding. And there was some power behind that for you, in terms of what that meant for you, in terms of what you were doing for yourself, but also the power behind what was happening with you, interviewing these people, bringing them out of hiding.
Exactly. The red thread is very apparent for me. And I denied that red thread for a long time, because I had this book germinating for a while, and I had been helping people in different ways, but I hadn't really codified it and really made it something more. And I also fell into prey, not victim, but fell into the same ideas that we read so much in, Harvard Business Review or in business magazines, the cream rises to the top, or, wait your turn and all those things. And bragging is so bad. And the research says don't do it. And so I got to a point where I'm like, well, wait a minute, who is doing this research and what does it really mean? So I looked at the research and I said, it's actually just done mostly on university cohorts in the US. So 20-year-old, 22-year-olds from American universities, often very small sample sizes too, where they've done, this research. And I realized it's not being able to, you can't really extrapolate that kind of feeling where these young people they want to fit in. And when you get into the world of work, yes, you need to fit in, but we also need to stand out. So I undertook the world's largest research survey on bragging and self-promotion, and really allowed people to understand what bragging meant and what self-promotion meant. And so I had lots of people respond to it. It's still up. I'll give you the link so that you can go and explore the research, the survey questions, because a lot of people felt it was quite introspective too, for them to understand some of the biases and the barriers that they've put on themselves. But it was remarkable what I found from people, where we are today and what we want to do and how we want to self-promote. So it was part of the red thread, is realizing, what, we're getting all these messages, and are they really right for today?
Right,
And that's the
right.
challenge I took.
Right. I mean, I love it's kind of like old school thinking, like even that whole, like, the cream will rise to the top, and wait, good things will happen. And what are we waiting for? Right. And when I think of us, right, Janice, and I know Janice works mostly with our young adult and teen clients, but it's like the network, the internet. I mean, everything is going, in triple speed at least, right? So it's like, what are we waiting for? Because and I also like the idea that it is a lot, there is more entrepreneurs than ever before working alone in their offices, in their homes, online businesses. So there is that isolation. So we have to be out there. We have to have that exposure, and things are moving at triple speed. So it's like, we cannot afford to wait, really, if we want to be successful. So we have to really switch that whole mindset of waiting versus exposing, right?
Yeah, it's that self-advocacy piece that we really have to say. And I work with entrepreneurs, and work with a lot with corporate too. And that's what they're looking for, is people who are willing to self-advocate, because
Mm.
it's really hard for all of us as leaders to remember all the great things that our team has done. So that's why I always say, for everyone, no matter what you do in the world, keep a brag book, keep all those things that people say to you, of like, good job, Karen, that you did that. And good job, like all the way through, so that you have them and that you can collect them. And on those down days that we all have, that you can have that, and you can look at it and say, okay, here's why I have this mission, this vision, this journey, and keep you going and keep you back on track. Because we all have those up and down days, but when you know why, and that your North Star has made a difference, then that's what's going to keep you going. Some days it's like, why am I doing this? Like, really,
Right.
why?
I read something in your book about compliments, right? So compliments we've heard, compliments we've given, and then keeping this book. And isn't that a great tool, Janice? We should be doing this with our clients, right? It kind of like what we try to do with their healthy selves and make their healthy selves bigger, right? Doesn't that remind you of that?
Yeah, I was actually going to say that really resonates with our emotional regulation work because with my clients, I get them to do a mastery list. And that's very similar to this. I get them to write down a list of all the things they're proud of, the things that they're good at, and I get them to use this as a tool, just like you said, on their down days. And they're like, "Wow, like this is so hard to do, but we didn't think about that, and it like it works." At least in those moments where you are feeling down, it's kind of nice to look back and see all those good things too.
Oh, I love that so much. And I have a tool in the book called From I Am like I'm Remarkable. And there is an I Am Remarkable program by Google that is really interesting too. But it's so hard to get people to realize what makes them remarkable. And we can go so quickly to self-deprecation and tell you all the things that's wrong with me, because I don't
Mhm.
want you to think, oh, she's so full of herself. But we have such a hard time, and people can't fill a full page, I mean, typing or even handwriting. They can
Mhm.
get 4 or 5 things down, and then it's a real challenge for them to say, here's what makes me remarkable. Sure, we can put our children and nieces and nephews down, and of course we're so proud to have those roles, but to go further deeper into yourself is a big challenge for people. And I want people to do that. What makes you remarkable that you can take anywhere, no matter what your job title? It's that transference of thinking and skills. And what is it inside of you that makes you also remarkable as part of one of your selling features? Like, what makes you,
Exactly.
it's hard to be different, it's hard to be unique, but remarkable is one of those words that's a positive word. And what can I do? What can I talk about? What makes me remarkable? Because we don't want to be better. Better is such a hard place to it's a
Mhm.
comparison piece.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Yeah.
Because like the better is like, yeah, there was something wrong with me to begin with, so I'm
Mhm.
getting better. Yeah, remarkable is a great word. I think we should keep that in our
Yeah.
toolkit, Janice. So because it is our focus and our mindset is everything, right? And you're right. It's kind of like we're doing better or we're doing well, and then one bad thing happens. It's like it wipes it
Yeah.
all out, and we're like back to square one. And rather than understanding that if we focus on the positive, then more positive will happen, right? It's so important. So tell us what were you surprised about when you started collecting the surveys and people started providing their input? What was there anything that shocked you or surprised you about this whole topic?
well, I was actually pleasantly surprised that 85% of us actually want the other person to brag. We want to hear your success stories. And I think it was the other 12% that said they would ignore you. And I think it was 2% said, if the math adds up, maybe 3%, that they would just turn around and brag about themselves. So it's
Mhm.
really that most of us are cheering for you, and we want to hear those stories of bragging. And how I have to put a caution here, because we've changed the word brag from what it meant. So
Mm,
originally in 1325, I'm taking us way back, it meant shine and shimmer. And then it
Mhm.
also meant bravery. And
mm,
like, that's beautiful. But what happened as language changed, and maybe we also became more compliant and in these factory systems, it became like, oh, we don't want to hear about your successes at all. Keep your head down, keep in the factory system, be that cog. If you're out there too much, you might take something away from the factory system. And so now it's defined as talking about your success with pride. And some dictionaries will say boastful, overdone, pompous. But what it means in the terms that I've defined it, and looking at many other dictionaries, it's really talking about your success with pride. But I want to throw out there, what's wrong with some self-love, which pride also means self-love. So I want us to understand that it's not a bad word. It's not a taboo word, because we don't really have words that allow us to talk about success then. And that negativity that goes with it is actually attached to the word self-aggrandizement. And
mhm.
that's where we are, that puffery and I'm better than you and I'm this and look at my yacht, when we're really just a guest in the harbor. And that's the problem when we wealth is often one of the places that people feel that ickiness, because showing off wealth is one of those things that still not everyone is comfortable with, but it's a contextual thing. Wealth is all about context, because one person's wealth is another person's, so it's all context based, so much of this work. But that was one thing. And then also how many people realized, because they didn't talk about themselves, they lost. One woman reported she's lost for sure millions of dollars because she watched the opportunities go by, waiting for somebody else to give them to her. So that was the self-reporting on some of it, because I also did interviews and people were able to leave their comments. And then credit was a big thing from the survey, that when people reported that, at least I think it was 70% of people had their credit stolen. And that's not just like we're sharing work, or that, I did this work for my leader and he took the work and put his name on it. No, this is where somebody took it out of my inbox and put it in their inbox and took my name off the work. And so I made a chapter in the book, or made a few pages in the book, about credit. And there's a lot of research being done on credit. And we do, this is not in the book, and I still wish I had put it in, but there is no I in team, but there is I in credit. And so, yes, we want to be team players, but we also need to claim our credit, because credit goes where credit knows. So if Joe had credit in the past for a project, and then second project, he comes up and he just brings the coffee, Joe will still get credit for the second project, because he's left breadcrumbs along the way, even though he didn't participate in the second one. So I want all of us to make sure we claim credit in a proper, collaborative way, but we make sure we claim credit along the way, so that the breadcrumbs can follow us to our future successes.
What a story. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're right. That would have been a great thing. Well, I'll put that in our byline for this podcast, because I love that. The I in credit. Yeah. And what are we watching and waiting for? But what I'm struck by are these stats. So if 85% of us want to hear others brag, but only 2% of us brag about ourselves. Wow, that's like mind-blowing. There's that 83% gap.
No, it was that 2% don't want to hear us brag. So those 2% are so loud that we hear them and we think, oh, we shouldn't do it. And these old social norms are what keeps us from bragging. All those old sayings like, don't ruffle feathers, keep your head down, do good work, and eventually someone will notice you, or the cream rises to the top. Those are the old social norms that so many of us were raised with, and we still keep to. I do have the stats. I'd have to look them up on how many people
actually brag. What would be your guess beyond that? What would be your guess?
You know what? So many people said that they just really needed to. So I'd have to look up, but they knew that they needed to. And I think it was like they avoided self-promotion. I have it here. It was 50% avoided it, self-promotion entirely. And then it was 35% said they never do it. So they, it's like sometimes, and then it's like all these excuses as to why too. So, but the afraid of self-promotion is the majority. So it was only about 30% of people who said they weren't afraid of self-promotion, so that it was that concerning, and they were afraid for numerous reasons, so that they were, the cultural aspects of it. And this is worldwide. So I have people from different cultures all over the world reporting, what will they think? That was a big one from a person in India who's like, what would the anonymous they, like, what would they think if you did that? So it's a lot of those things that people reported. And, work hard, be loyal to your boss. That's another one. And don't brag, if somebody challenges you. And so a lot of also that false modesty concern, like being that I'm going to be, it's not me. It's so indoctrinated, ingrained in us. And it makes it, the corrosiveness is another thing that came up. Being invisible for a lot of us, especially as we age, the invisibility is corrosive. And that's a problem, where we're not seen and we're not heard. And we can see it directly on media, but if you look around, people feel like they shouldn't produce anymore because we're not being seen and heard. And how sad is that, right? We have all these long runways, and the best times is every day to be producing something. So I could go into the research for forever, because I love.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I mean, my head is filled with questions here, but there still is that huge gap between people who want to hear about what other people are doing, and how many people are avoidant of it or afraid of it. And so there's this real dichotomy between what we want and what we're doing, right? And this is an important gap to identify. So let's jump into some of these pieces. Like, I don't know if you have the numbers or some thoughts about this around age or gender. You mentioned culture, so like culture didn't seem to be a determining factor. What are some of the other results that you found that might be interesting?
The survey, interestingly enough, I did have a university partner with me, and we didn't get a great response from people who were under 24 years old. And when the people were younger than that, it really goes back and it matched the research, much more of the older research that I did when I did a literature review. It matched that so it was clear that they weren't as comfortable with standing out, which is very common when you're very young. You do want to fit in. But so my research really focused on the age group that was above 24, and we had a high response of people 35 up to 75 years old. So really there's the medium, we had a lot of people respond who were in their 35 to 65. So great.
What does that tell you, Janice?
Yeah,
Right?
I think mostly it's like you said, I think we're just afraid at such a young age, or we feel like we haven't accomplished much to even brag about or promote about. And so I could see why, it would be so much lower for anyone below 24.
Yeah, but how important it is at that age, because that really like
It
sets
is.
you up for life. I always say to Janice, like, we used to think the 20s were the throwaway decade, right? But what the research we know is that it's actually the most important
Hmm.
decade in our life in terms of our relationship with money and career
Yep.
and relationships. So it's interesting. So they're in hiding under the 24. Not all of them, but some of them, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so then what did you find as age as a determining factor, not just in terms of who responded to your surveys, but I think you said something a few minutes ago about like the corrosive invisibility. What a word.
Yeah, a lot of people are realizing that self-promotion is necessary. I can throw in one more stat. It was only 5% of people that disagreed with, since the pandemic, I now believe self-promotion is necessary. Only 5% felt that it was not necessary. And that counted with always thought it was necessary at 35%. So the rest of them were like, no, I need to do it even more so because after this pandemic era. So I thought that was really interesting. A lot of people who are older, they had that let your reputation speak for itself. And that was believing now that that's outdated advice at 53% and only sound advice at 21%. So the rest of the people that to make up the math really felt that it was outdated. They're concerned about it. So there's a lot of feedback on that. And then also the people that said they need to self-promote, it's overwhelming how many people. It was like 95% said they need to self-promote more and get out there. So, and you know what? We all want to talk about other people's success more than ourselves. So it was only like 10% that said, I would rather talk about myself, like, because we all want to talk about everyone else than ourselves. And then the hidden gem, it was 70, it was 80, no, it was 79%. I'm doing math on the fly, looking at the
Okay,
wheels
no
here.
worries. Yeah.
79% felt like they are hidden gems. So many of us feel like we're hidden gems that, we're doing all this good work. And in my work too, I'm already assuming you're good. Like, you're doing great work. So I'm not trying to make people, work harder. You've already done the work. The part of the problem is that we're burning out because we're doing such good work, and we're being told to be seen and be heard, we need to do more and more and more, because we're waiting for that person to say, oh, you, but that person's so busy doing their thing. So we keep producing. And so we're doing all this work waiting to be seen and heard, that we're burning out. Where if we said, here's the success here's my success stories. Look, I'm the person who's doing this. Come find me. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I offer. That's when we're going to get ahead without as much burnout. And I do believe that because people aren't seen and heard in the workplace, they're burning out. And, mediocre people are often rising because they're the ones who are, a little bit more, they're louder, some of them. And so it's like, that's problematic. And that's where the invisibility is corrosive, and people will leave.
Oh, we just lost her.
leave a workplace so that they're able to, that one that always allowed themselves on a resume. When we're job hunting, it's the 100% brag time. And the rest of it, we're not supposed to. So people will leave their employer to go and find a new job because they are allowed to brag, and bragging internally still within a corporation feels awkward. And so they won't do it. So they'll leave. So we need to start promoting a culture of supporting success stories and not just talking about failures.
Yeah, I think when we're isolated or alone or invisible, it just piggybacks on how we're devaluing ourselves. And then we're probably even less likely to talk about what we're doing well. And it is that kind of sense of defeat or devaluing that what we're doing isn't that important or we're not that good. And to be busy and feeling not good enough. I mean, that is just a recipe for all kinds of things, including burnout. So I really love how you're making that connection. And I think that's really important for our listeners, Janice, to understand that changing the internal dialogue so that we
Mhm.
feel confident to promote, then that invites attention, positive attention, so we're less alone. And I think if we're less alone, then we just feel better about the work that we're doing or whatever we're doing in our lives. And I think it all starts, it's like that chicken and egg cause and effect, because how we promote ourselves internally and externally, we invite that network in the community, which is so important. Because when we're isolated, burnout just happens more often, for sure, along with any other issues that we're looking at with clients, including anxiety and depression and anger and frustration. So it has a huge impact. Was there any differences, and I don't know if you have this stat or not, in terms of the gender, men versus women?
I had a lot of women respond to the survey, but a lot of people felt that they also they needed to brag. So that it was almost the intersectionality of it was really hard to delineate, and I couldn't go down because there's so many people responding for intersectionalities that were beyond what we had asked for. So we'd asked for age and we did ask for gender, but people also identified as to, that, their socioeconomic and so many different ways that they identified. But there was a large response where people felt that women were penalized more so than men for bragging and self-promotion. And I think we've heard a lot of those stories. I think we also have it. I wonder if it's also because we've had so much media about, we've heard anecdotally, like, okay, all these business magazines say, don't do it. It's going to penalize women. So there's all that in the background of like, we shouldn't do it. And there's going to be more penalties. So yes, I do think some women have been penalized and those stories really sting.
Mm.
It's funny because I asked somebody, I asked Adam Grant, who's a famous author and a university professor who wrote bragging, you shouldn't brag about yourself because it violates modesty norms. And if you were that good, your work would speak for itself. So I had a chance to ask him if he still stood by that in 2020, especially for women and women who are Indigenous and women of color. And he said he still stands by it because the research shows the penalty to women who brag and self-promote is too great. So that's interesting. But my challenge to that statement is then, well, when do we challenge the research to real life? So we have to wait for the research to change for us to then self-promote and brag? Is it chicken and egg again? No, we need to be out there sistering up, collaborating with each other and supporting each other as we share our success stories during this time where it's still a challenging thing, an icky thing, as people reported to me. We need to support each other as we share our stories, and we can have joy, which is the joy of sharing other people's success stories. It's a word that researchers made up. And gratitude, where I have a brag and I have gratitude for that. And I can have gratitude for your success stories. And Freude und Freude, which is where I experience joy at someone else's successes instead of, when somebody else fails and we have Schadenfreude, or that we just enjoy somebody else's misery. No, like, let's change this story so we can change the research so we can get the bigger story out that we should all be seen and heard, because it's so important for us to move forward together. And that's my mission, is I want more and more people to be seen and heard.
Yeah, I love all your words. I hope you have a dictionary in your in your book or whatever, but this is alarming, right? So this is an alarming point. Because if we understand the benefits of bragging, of self-promotion, of advertising, of exposing, and women are still penalized. That is such a strong word. Penalties, right? So there, we put this in this context of why it's been so hard, particularly for women. So you're already avoiding or afraid, and then if there are penalties, there's that negative reinforcement, and then it puts us back into hiding. And what we deprive the world of, right? Because I was thinking about this as I was listening to you, because I'm like, these hidden gems, letting my reputation
Mhm.
talk for itself. I'm thinking what the world misses out on, right? Of all the good work that's getting done that people don't hear about, and the benefit that we come from sharing and the showing, because it's good for us, it's good for the world. But it's alarming for me to hear that word penalty. It just resonated for me, because then it's like, what are we going to do with that? Because if we collude with the penalizing, then we will just stay in hiding. And at what point do we face the, like you said earlier, shining and braving, which was the origin of this word, shining and being brave about it. Yeah, I guess it does take courage still, right, in this day and age, for women to put themselves out there and risk being penalized, but saying it anyway, right?
I think the risk is too strong to stay hidden. So it's which risk is the stronger one to take? Do I swing the pendulum and put myself out there and let people know, or do I stay hidden and corrosive? It becomes corrosive, that this invisibility cloak becomes suffocating. And so what I would suggest people do though is have courage, because you will not have confidence. So have courage and put out your moments and not wait till the perfect milestone. So we wait till we've won that award or gotten that next certificate. And what I would suggest people to do is show people moments along the way, tiny moments of success, tiny moments of the project you're working on, tiny moments of the success you've had with your clients, and letting them see those little glimmers of, yes, that does connect. And the breadcrumbs, that's when all of a sudden you show up and you're top of the game and you're number one, and people aren't like, huh? Shocked at that. You've
Yeah, like,
left the breadcrumbs along the way to show credibility and success, and that it's not such a big surprise that you are the top person. So that would be a little bit of
yeah,
a,
I like the idea of breadcrumbs, because it's like just a little bit, just a little bit. And
Mhm.
maybe as people get more comfortable promoting, then it's like it's not so massive. It's like they've built it up over time.
and that's what it is. It's just doing it over time. It's not, and that's a lot of people, when they're looking for a new opportunity, they'll all of a sudden show up. You'll see it on social media, and they'll polish everything and then just bombard everyone with all of it. And it's
Mhm.
a little surprising. And so just get into the habit of putting out and collecting all of the things that support you and people brag about you and give you those kudos, collecting those along the way and sharing them as you go. And if you don't want to put them on social media, share it internally with your associations or with whatever organizations you belong to. Let them know, because there's so many intranet pages. Let them know along the way, or share it with a friend who then might share it on social media. We can do these things together so that we can help each other out. But don't wait until you have the big gold shining star that we are taught to
Right.
wait for in school. No, show those miles, show your work now. Show
Yeah.
those things now, so we
Yeah.
can start to have those experiences with you and help, give you the thumbs up
That's
along the
great.
way.
Yeah, no watching and waiting. So we just have a couple of minutes. Janice, what do you want to ask Lisa about, your population? You talked a little bit earlier, kind of more hidden gems, people wanting to fit in. What do you want to ask her about the age group that you serve?
Yeah, I guess Lisa, how would like your work or this book apply to that age group and population? Because as I said earlier, I think we're just a little bit more resistant to sharing because a lot of times we don't feel like we've accomplished as much or like our experience hasn't got us there. And all of this resonates so well, just even when I started with Karen. I remember being so hesitant because I thought, was I ready? Because I had just got my master's and I was like, am I ready for like such a big step to start like joining her in this private practice? And like just with like talking about my experiences so far and Karen's support and my family's support, it was like, I'm gonna do this. So I didn't wait and I did it. Probably one of the best decisions I've made, I would say, hands down. So just like what would you say like for that age group? Like how do we put ourselves out there along the lines of what you've been sharing today?
It's really realizing that right away, you need to start building up your brag book so you have that history, because we forget. All of us forget, no matter what your age, because we've gone on to the next goal. So making sure that you collect the evidence along the way. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just something, what makes you proud? What
Mhm.
lights you up inside? And share that with people. And if your family is responsive, share it with them. Because back in the day, it used to be our family sharing all of our accolades and our successes. And they would know, the baker, the butcher, the candlestick maker would know what we're good at and probably what we're not good at. So they would know and share those things for us. So but make sure that you are starting to appreciate yourself. So I think it's always that we have to start having some self-love to know that we are of service to the world. And thinking of that too, when we talk about self-promotion, it's really letting people know how I am here to serve. So knowing where you are and where you want to go. And so often we think that we have to have this solid reputation. And I kind of heard that in your answer, that it's like, well, who am I? I just started. We feel like we have to have this big book of reputation, but the reality is our reputation is the past. And what I want people to do is think about, here's where I am and here's where I'm going. What's the potential of you? Because yes, you have to have a good reputation, but what we buy now, what we think of people is based on their potential. And so many of us, especially women, we think it has to be our reputation. If we don't have all of those pieces built into the past, then we can't go for the future that we want. And then we so often make lateral moves. And what I want you to do is start thinking about, what is the future you, no matter your age, the future Karen, the future Janice, what is the future you, and mark it to where you want to go and not necessarily where you've been. So getting some clarity about, where do I want to go? And this doesn't have to be forever. It just has to be for the next little while of, yes, I'm going to invest in Lisa doing this. I'm investing right now in Lisa as author, speaker, and the things I'm doing with that. Like, that's where I want to go. Have I been an author before? No, I've produced a lot of things, but writing a book, so it's a new journey for me.
Yeah.
And so that's but I'm positioning myself to where I want to go. And so that's advice, universal advice for everyone, but start thinking about how great you are today.
Yeah,
I love
I
that.
remember hearing a lot of this last year, and I don't know if it was post-pandemic, like what was going on, but all of a sudden everybody kept talking about live your future self now, right? Remember Janice
Mm.
and I would talk about that. So this is really aligned with that. So thank you so much for coming today, Lisa. So what I'm hearing, and I think what our listeners really want to tag onto, I'm writing, like my pages are filled here with notes that I've taken, but key words that I'm hearing: potential, right? Embrace your potential. No watching and waiting. It comes from a place of self love. So the work we do is so important. Oftentimes, there's been difficult situations in our life that have really wounded us, and it's eroding our self love. And so, the gap between how we feel about ourselves and what we're doing on the outside. So, we have to really take care of really nurturing that self love, so that what we're putting out to the world is our true self, our valid, our valued self. This phrase, success with pride, right? And living in what we are proud of what we're doing or what we see ourselves doing, and kind of old school outdated ideas of watching and waiting, and the cream will come to the top, and let reputation talk for itself. It turns out that we do want to hear what other people are doing. We want to benefit from what other people are doing. So working our way through those avoidance or fears and tapping into our authentic good enough self to promote ourselves and to help the world, right? Because the work that we're doing, this is what we're doing it for, to improve our lives and the lives of other people. What I want to close with too are the tools in this book. So it's available on Amazon, and I'll turn it over to you in a minute about where people can get your book. But what I really like, and I know I mentioned this before, but it's worth stating again, is that let the research inform us, and let's pick up the tools that are going to make the difference, whether it's a bragging book, a mastery list, building your history, and all of those key moments that we want to put out there. And the other thing you talked about was compliments, right? It always feels good when we compliment each other. Let's compliment ourselves. Let's collect and have at our kind of our self-awareness of what people have noticed in our own goodness. let that reflect back to us so that it makes that ability to be more visible and exposed easier, right? So let's talk about where people can get your book, and then we'll close it off for our listeners.
Yeah, you can get the book at any bookstore now. It's available Amazon and Indigo if you're in Canada. It's available now on an ebook and an audiobook and paperback. So it's all available. And there's also inside, there's lots of tools that you can use. I made, to consider, which gives us a reflective piece because we don't spend enough time reflecting. I think you know that. Then things that we should do. So easy things that you can get going on today that aren't arduous, that little steps that you can get going and to share, because this work is so much a collaboration. How do we share the knowledge from the book with other people and also work with them to help, our self-promotion and our bragging. So it has those steps, but you can get it anywhere. You can find out more about me at lisabragg.com. And I also invite you to follow me on social media. I'm either Lisa Bragg or that Lisa Bragg on social media. So I hope you do follow along because I'm putting out a lot of information from the book and all the new thinking that's coming along the way on my journey with this. So I hope I invite you to those different sources, but please do buy the book because it has a lot of content in it.
We have the book, That Lisa Bragg. Are you bragging about That Lisa Bragg and the bragging rights? We're going to watch Lisa brag about her book. Listen, we love this.
Absolutely.
To consider, to do, to share. Okay. So reflection, action, and then putting it out there. These steps are incredible. I love that so much. So thank you to all our listeners. Hopefully part of what you heard today, generate some ideas for yourself and where your own level of self-love is, where your own measures or experiences with avoidance of fear, and what you need to put out more to the world as you build your history, as you build your credibility, and owning the credit, the I in credit. We're KG and Associates. Welcome to Straight Talk for Mental Health. I've been here with my associate, Janice D'Souza. You can reach me at KarenRSW.com. I'm also at 647-985-0633. And over to you, Janice.
Yeah, my email is j6dsouza@gmail.com, and my direct line is 416-316-7686.
Perfect. Thanks again for both of you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.